I'm the Director of Operations and the Associate General Counsel for the college. Dean Cox and the Provost are going to make a few comments in just a moment, but I wanted to talk briefly about what we hope to accomplish today. We obviously are undertaking a fairly comprehensive review of our cooperative extension system. We've broken that down into a few subject matter areas, and today we hope that each of the subcommittees that correspond with those areas can begin to develop a plan of work and some sort of concrete idea about how to go about the job that we're asking you all to help us with. So Lori Garkovich is going to help you sort of work through those issues and begin to understand what you want to look at, who you want to talk to, and how to go about doing the job that we're asking you to do. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Dean Cox.
Thank you, Tim. We do really appreciate everyone being here. You'll notice people walking around so we can see everybody, because this used to be a dairy barn. For those of you who haven't been here before, Judge Barnett, welcome. We just went around the room. This is Judge Alex Barnett from Harrison County. We appreciate having you.
Glad to be here.
This is a really important kickoff session for this review. We're glad that as many of you could attend. Senator Hornback, we really appreciate, and also our external constituents, Bobby Forey, Dave Maples, Whitney Stith. We're partners in so many ways, and we really appreciate you all being here and giving your time. Likewise, we appreciate Robin Shepard, Greg Hadley, Frankie Gould, and Steve Kleiber for being part of this. And then, of course, everybody else who I didn't name is an employee of the UK College of Agriculture. Laura Noth, thank you, didn't see you. Yeah, Laura Noth, another hugely important constituent, and sorry I didn't get your name when you came in, but we're absolutely glad to have you as well. So we are a really large system. We're an effective system. I was talking to Senator Hornback earlier. We have maintained a pretty good size with our extension system in the face of a lot of other states. Extension systems getting a lot smaller. A lot of that is because of our county, or most of it is because of our county partnerships. And in fact, many counties have invested in increasing numbers of agents and staff and facilities. And so one kind of question we've asked ourselves is, are we organized correctly to provide the best support for a new agent coming in? Because we've gotten ourselves a little thin, possibly, with the district directors supervising over 100 people that are in the different counties. So I think that's one question we hope you guys will delve into. We also appreciate the Provost being here, and he pretty much charged us to do this review. It wasn't a hostile takeover, it was a friendly, amicable charge to do this review, but we appreciate Provost Tracy being here. And another thing, we've been thinking about, we're in 120 counties, and when we were set up in Extension, when it was founded in the Smith-Lever Act in 1914, we didn't have good cars, good phones, good computers, and so, what would we change if we were starting over today? And I would also say that this review is extremely timely in view of elections yesterday in Kentucky, where we will have a new leadership party in the House of Representatives, and we have an opportunity to show our accountability and most of all our service. I think the one thing that underlies the whole reason for this review is how can we serve Kentucky better. And another thing I believe about Extension is that we need to be seen as relevant to the communities, and we need to be seen as the innovators in a given community. I think we are, by and large, but that's what we need to be, in my thoughts, for our hallmark, for our service, relevancy, and innovation. So it's, again, very timely that we're doing this. We have a great mix of folks from out of Kentucky and in. We'll have a few more external constituents who couldn't be here today, but I'm very, very appreciative, and I know I speak for the rest of our college, that you guys are coming together here. we've got a lot of data for you, but whatever else you need, just let us know and we'll get it. Dr. Garkovich is a hero she's my hero for strategic planning. I feel confident that you guys are going to enjoy the exercise you have together with her, as well as be very productive. And so I would like to invite Provost Tracy up for a couple of comments. Please help me welcome him.
Thanks, Dean Cox, and I will also probably walk around a bit because it's... First I want to thank all of you for being here today. It's a tremendously important job, and I'm so pleased to be here to help kick it off. I'd also like to particularly welcome our folks from outside the college, our stakeholders here within the state, but also our consultants from around the country who've come in to help us with this process. You know, as I look at, the other thing is, though, I'm waiting to see if Joanna brings ice cream.
No ice cream today.
Oh. Yes.
Next time.
So look, she can tell you the story over lunch today, but cookie dough was my favorite.
Good.
So let me take a few moments and talk a little bit about this. You know, we're a land-grant university. An extension is a key part of that. We have one of the largest extension services in the country. And so the question I always ask is, what is the impact we're making on our communities? What is the difference that we're making? And I know we're making a difference. We're making a lot of difference throughout the communities. In fact, you may not know that Extension alone has over 6,000 partnerships. 6,000 partnerships. And I'm going to come back to that point in just a moment, but that's the kind of relationships we have throughout the state. But we have a strategic plan here at the University of Kentucky, approved by our board just a little over a year ago. It's a very aggressive and ambitious strategic plan, but it has community engagement and outreach as a key part of that plan. It's one of the 5 pillars of that strategic plan. So I'd encourage you, as you go through your work, to go back to that plan and ask yourselves, how does the work you're doing here fit within that larger university plan? Because everything should roll up to that larger plan that we're trying to use across the state and across our work throughout all the aspects of what we do. But as I think about this, I love the first question, and that is, what would you envision as if you were building an extension service today from scratch, so to speak? Because I like that way of thinking and saying, in fact, I asked folks when we met prior to Dean Cox's hiring, we had a luncheon at the President's house, which some of you were there, I think. I remember you being there, representing the Cattlemen's Association. And I said, what should extension of the future be? And I asked that question, and I asked that question today. What should extension of the future be? And I'm going to frame that again around a second question, that is, what are the 1, 2, or 3 big questions or big problems that you can address? What are the things where you could really, really change this state? How could you make a coordinated effort to change the trajectory of this state? Now that sounds lofty, but let me give you a couple examples. I'll give you one in particular that I think about. Here in Fayette County, we have the Fayette County Public School System. Manny Kalk is the superintendent, and I've gotten to know him quite well. And we were having lunch the other day, and he said a couple of things that struck me. One was that in Fayette County, there are more than 100 different languages spoken in the schools. 100 different languages in Fayette County Public Schools. The second piece of data he gave us was that 10 years ago, 25% of the students received free or reduced price lunches. Today, that number is 50%. It has doubled in 10 years. This is Fayette County, one of the wealthiest counties in the state, but also a dichotomy. We have really 2 populations in Fayette County. So then he told a third story, and there was an elementary school student who ran away from home one night. This was like a 4th grader. That student ran to the local elementary school. It was the one place where they felt safe and they thought someone would be there. This was 7 p.m. in the evening though. This was not 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Luckily a teacher was there, found the student, helped them get with an administrator, and took the student back home and found that the family was in crisis. So now I wrap that into a big story and say, how could we at the University of Kentucky develop a program that addresses this? And this is not unique to Fayette County. There's a county in the southeastern part of the state where 40% of the children did not have an adult in the home the night before. That's a pretty striking number. So think about how Extension in 120 counties, working with our College of Education, our College of Social Work, pediatrics, dentistry, can you begin to see how that's a big question that we could begin to answer? I'm going to tell you that's the question you have to answer. But I'm trying to say that that's the kind of thing I would like for you to envision, is how can we make a difference in something that is not only helps Kentucky, but can be scalable beyond. Something that can carry on. Now that's not to say we don't need to think about economic development, agriculture. I'm not trying to put one over another. I'm just trying to get you to think big. Because if we begin to frame that, then you will come to the solution of what is the organizational structure to support that. So I'd encourage you to think first about what is your vision. What are you trying to accomplish? What are the problems that you want to solve? Once you've thought about those, then you can devise the structure that supports that. Because as I say, strategy should drive budget, not budget driving strategy. Strategy should drive your organizational structure, not organizational structure driving your strategy. So how do you put those together in something? But I'd also, again, as I've hinted, ask you to think collaboratively beyond the College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, and how you interact with other entities on campus and around the state, in whatever form that is. How do you bring that together to make the biggest difference? I find this process tremendously exciting. It's a chance to envision the future. You've got a clean slate, but you start that clean slate with a lot of resources. About $60 million or so of resources, Dean Cox, somewhere in that general neighborhood. So it's not like we have no budget. We have about $60 million of budget. So how do we design that for the future? Because I think that will be the critical question, is what does this look like? You know, I'm sitting here at the university level and saying that higher education is probably going to change more in the next 10 years than it has in the last 100. And I think I'm probably pretty safe in that statement. How can Extension be ahead of the pack and set the course for the next 20 to 50 years for Kentucky? It's such an integral part of what we do. It's our DNA. But how do we now use that DNA to create the future? Because the needs of the state are changing. And the ways, as Dean Cox hinted, the ways we communicate have changed. The ways we interact have changed, but also our communities are changing in many different ways. We look at population shifts, we look at shifts in what we do in the economy. There's certainly big changes going on in Eastern Kentucky. And how do we help them grow as well for the betterment of all? So I encourage you to think big, think broadly, but think of what are the things you want to, the big questions you want to address, how you want to address those, and how you can use these resources to make a tremendous impact in this state. So thank you for this great work that you're beginning. I look forward to seeing the results of it, and I know it will be exciting and something that we can all be proud of. Thank you.
Dean Cox, Provost Tracy, thank you both for your leadership on this. Certainly, we could not do what we need to do without you all supporting us in that way. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Garkovich.
Did anybody have questions for them? Questions? Yes.
I think from Provost Tracy, my understanding, I think this would be helpful for, I guess, the whole group to know, is the university-wide shift for faculty to have potentially a formal role in engagement, so beyond the College of Agriculture. So that's something I think we should, if you could maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Probably easier if I, not that I need to stand up.
No.
It'd be easier to do so. I think the question, maybe for the external folks, maybe if I can take a moment and give a little bit of context to that question, because it's a great question. At the university, we assign what we call effort. And we call it the DOE. And everybody, I first said, what's the Department of Engineering or Department of Education and Department of Energy got to do with it? DOE stands for distribution of effort. And at the university, we allocate our effort based on teaching, research, and service. But I think most would agree that that engagement or service part is the nebulous part that sometimes gets, we don't do a great job of quantitating it, we don't do a great job of rewarding for it. And so what I've actually asked the Faculty Senate to work with me on is a way to look at not only our faculty title series, but also how we reward people within those title series. We have what's called tenure track, and that's the folks that go through the process and get that contract that says, academic freedom and a semi-guarantee of employment. And then we have non-tenure track folks, but they have a whole different set of titles within that. I'm a big fan of a person by the name of Ernest Boyer. I don't know if you've heard of Boyer. It's a scholar who talks about different types of scholarship. One of them is the scholarship of discovery. Makes sense. It talks about the scholarship of teaching, the scholarship of engagement, the scholarship of innovation, the scholarship of application. And so I'm asking the Faculty Senate to work with me to get those recognized in the promotion and tenure processes so that that is adequately rewarded. And we have a symphony here at the University of Kentucky. And maybe the College of Agriculture is the percussion section. And you have the timpani, and you have the snare drums, and you have the bass drums, and you have the cymbals. But you have all those for percussion, and that is complementary to the College of Arts and Sciences, which may be the woodwind section. And it comes together in a symphony. So how do we bring all those pieces together, and how do we reward them? Not just for the number of grants that you receive. The papers you publish can be papers on new engagement methods and new service methods of reaching out and applying that in communities. And how do we give proper credit for that? And so that's, to me, an integral part of this is to go through that process and make sure that this work is valued like all the other work we do at the University of Kentucky. So I don't want people to get pigeonholed and say, well, you're asking for A, but you're rewarding for B. No. This is part of what we do, and we reward for it. To get tenure, you must try new methods, test them, publish them, disseminate that work. But that's fine. It's in the area of service and engagement. And so that's something that I think, it may sound a little esoteric for some of you, but for us, that's what we live and die by. And I want to make sure that we give proper credit for that. And that's a key component of why I bought the Senate Counsel Boyer's book and handed it to him, and I said, this is what we're going to use as the guidelines to begin looking at this, so it recognizes those things. I think that's a key component, because if you ask folks to do one thing and you reward for them doing another, you aren't going to get the result. As Lou Gerstner, who was the former CEO of IBM, said, he had an article in the Wall Street Journal called "The Corporate Culture Ate My Organization." I thought, okay, I'm intrigued enough to read this. And we all talk about culture. Well, he made a very profound statement in there. He said, it's not what you expect, it's what you inspect. It's not what you expect, it's what you inspect. You can expect all kinds of things, but if you inspect or reward for something different, that's what you'll get. And so we need to make sure that we're inspecting for what we want to have happen. We can have all the flowery words and have all the times of getting together to set culture, but if that's not what we reward, we're not going to get that culture. So your question is very timely and very appropriate because we need to make sure that our recognition and reward systems matches what we're trying to accomplish. Long-winded answer to your question, I'm very passionate about this. It's making sure that those things are recognized, not just as, oh, and that's the other stuff you do. Because unfortunately, in some cases, that's what it's been. Maybe I'll stand here a minute and see if there are any other questions.
Can't be quiet. So,
That's all right. We're the largest cattle producing state east of
I just sometimes I have a hard time understanding where your priorities are at the university. I just live right down the road, and my office is right down the road too. See all of these nice buildings, I could read the newspaper, but agriculture, and I was looking at it again the other day, Dr. Cox, our building is falling down. These nice folks were in my office the other day, we will build a grain center of excellence in Princeton. They need funding. They're out here begging for funding. But I see the paper, we're building a $49 million baseball field. I don't understand what that does for my community when food, everybody in Kentucky has to have food. And I don't think we, the university, the administration, is supporting agriculture like you should be.
So let me walk you through a few pieces of that. Since you mentioned baseball, I'll address the baseball stadium. Our athletic department is 100% self-supporting. They receive no money from the state, no money from the university other than what they generate, and that will be paid for by them. And in fact, they gave us $65 million for the academic science building, and they give us about $3 million for general scholarship funds every year, and they pay for all their athletes, which is about $14 million. So we may disagree philosophically, but that's...
I mean, I knew that's what you were saying.
Right, so that's that part. We just, yesterday I got the final version of a master plan for the College of Agriculture, Food and Environment. It'll be a couple decades, but it is a master plan where we are planning what the buildings, the renovations, and that will look like. And we just finished that. I got the copy last night and saw that. We balance all those priorities. Our housing stock, we call it housing stock, residence halls. The average age 6 years ago was 40 years. Today it's 3 years. Students don't come if you don't have a reasonably nice place to live. And that was, and right now, we received $267 million from the state. 80 million of that goes directly passed through, 60 million roughly to extension. Of that money comes right on through to extension. So that leaves us about 180 million. Tuition generates a little over $600 million. So that is the bulk of what we have here at the university. If you look at our overall budget, about 7%, Angie, comes from the state.
That's right.
If you look at the overall budget, if you take out health care, it's about 12%, something like that. So we are heavily dependent on tuition for how we operate. College of Agriculture, Food and Environment is a key part of that. A couple thousand students, Nancy, roughly, 2,000 enrolled students. So it is a key part. The money we pass through, the 60 million, goes through for extension. The other parts for the college comes through other parts of their allocations. And we believe it's an important part, and we balance all those things together. But we understand that we are the land-grant institution of Kentucky.
And Dave, I'll also say, we not push hard for buildings in this college till, the last couple of years. And the provost and Vice President Monday have been very supportive, and they funded this master planning that we're doing. So we do feel like we're going in the right direction.
And it's not about the building, it's more about the culture and the message and the perception that is seen outside of riding down the road. But we all have to eat, and that's a big part of our well-being is food. So it's important.
It's about, help me, Drew, $760 million in the economy every year is agriculture. about $750 million, I think, if I remember last numbers I saw. Somewhere in the neighborhood. Good question.
And over 260,000 jobs in Kentucky go back to agroforestry, processing, transport, they go back to agroforestry, so that's a lot of jobs. Right, Allison?
But
Is that your number?
I'm not going on record, but sure.
That's the number I got from
I know,
you,
I know,
girl.
I know.
Okay.
Been a while, I'm sorry. One every 9 jobs. There we go.
Okay.
In the county.
Oh, in the county, one
Yes.
and nine, yeah, in the state, it's 260,000.
Other questions? I'm sorry to move around, but I kind of, I'm not very good at standing behind a podium anyway. I fail miserably. Good questions. Thank you.
I guess I'll ask one.
Sure.
Oh,
It's just a back row crew.
Yeah.
He knows what I mean.
yeah. Obviously, it's probably good timing to take a look at extension. I guess for me, it would be helpful. Are there any expectations on maybe some things that either you or the dean or somebody would really like to see come out of this? I mean, I want the process to be fruitful, to be helpful, but sometimes if we kind of have a little direction on here is kind of where we think as a university or as a college we would like to go, that might help us in our thought process.
Yeah, so we try to go through a few things off the top of my head. One, I don't in any way want to minimize the great many things that we do, but can, out of this, you find those 2 or 3 big initiatives or big things you'd like to take on, and how you set up for that. Because I think that's where you make those big differences. Is again, I don't want to say those partnerships are not valuable and we don't continue, but if we were going to put new money, or if we were going to put our money in someplace, where would you put it? You know, how do we avoid the peanut butter effect, where we spread a little peanut butter all over and everybody's a little happy, but we don't really change things? So what are the needs of this state? It gets back to your question. What are the needs of this state, and what is something of a major impact that Extension can do to make that trajectory go like this? That's one piece I'll add to that. The second is, I would like to see, and I'm speaking from a provost level now, are there ways that you can leverage with other, we'll call it assets on campus, other resources? Are there things where it's complementary? You do a wonderful program for migrant farm worker children. Right, you have a migrant farm worker children program that helps them catch up because they move 2 and 3 times a year. Is there a way to expand that by including the College of Education and maybe social work and really make an even bigger difference in those kids' lives? You see what I'm trying to get at is, how do we leverage it? We've got a lot of assets here on campus, and how do we bring those all together? So I'd ask you to think even more broadly than just the College of Agriculture Food and Environment. Not that it isn't tremendously important, but are there other things that we can bring together to make that impact? Can the College of Business help with thinking about economic impact? And the CBER, Center for Business Economics Research, Chris Bollinger's center. Is there something there that helps you figure out the economic impact? Because one of the things we need to also be able to tell is our story on economic impact in the state. And is there a way to calculate that? What's the full impact of the programs? So that's the second piece that I would say out of it. The third piece is probably then, what is the framework for interacting with our communities? You've got offices in all 120 counties, but that's physical offices. What's the social fabric of that, and how does that transpire in a new world? Certainly social media played a huge role in the election campaign that finished yesterday. Traditional media was a little different, right? This thing looked and felt very different. Your lives are changing exactly that same way, the way you interact with your communities. What does that look like? What is that way with now our technology and where it's going in the future? What does that way of interacting with communities look like? Some of it's face-to-face, but how do we communicate across our communities and interact with them. You know, I mean, goodness gracious, these little things in our pocket, everybody's got one. What does that look like in terms of how you carry out your business? And the last point then is what is the organizational structure that supports that? And I think Dean Cox hinted at it with 7 districts and each person managing over 100 people. That's probably not the most efficient and effective way. I mean, that's a lot of expectations for a person. There was a district director in here somewhere. I don't remember where that was. Yeah, and I mean, that's a tough job. That's a tough job to have that broad of. So what does that look like in terms of how we function? And I always get worried when 100 people report to one person. That's tough for somebody to manage. You know, I'm not big on layers and layers of bureaucracy, but think out of the box. And think out of the box and how this functions as an organization. And I've got 27 direct reports, and I can tell you it's all I can do to keep up. I mean, just to meet with them on a regular basis consumes a large part of a week. So how do we think about that? So it's those first 2 things about big questions. It's how do we draw upon a bigger set of resources? Thirdly is how do we interact with our communities in new ways? And then fourthly is what's the structure that supports that? So I give a little bit of, it's off the top of my head, so I'm doing the best that I can. I'm trying to be coherent this morning. It was a day in Atlanta yesterday, and I'm still recovering from that event. What else? There's good questions. This is the time to ask the questions, right? And I don't have all the answers, but hopefully I can give you some things to think about.
You know, Richard, to add on to that a little bit, I really think I speak for myself and all of us when I say we don't toot our own horn enough. We do things, we like to say we do things on Monday in the college that that other colleges don't do the whole week. But sorry, Provost, but
if you didn't advocate for your college, I'd worry about it.
Yeah, but we are our culture is get her done people rather than brag on it people. So you know, I think we can communicate better about what we do. Hopefully, that'll be an outcome of this as well. You know.
Has there been any survey work? I mean, we're talking about capacity building, so have you talked to the constituents? Has there been some public, I mean, is there going to be that piece of this, the public interaction, beyond a group like this who's trying to represent those voices?
I would hope you go out and speak to
Let me just say that they will receive information based on the strategic planning that the college did finished off about 1.5 years ago, that involved probably over 1,000 people throughout the state. And they talked about the entire college, but there's a significant amount of commentary about the extension system, and that information is going to be provided to you on a jump drive, so that you will, because that's not been that long ago. It's only been about 1.5 years, isn't it? About
Yeah.
a year and a half.
About a year, yes.
Yeah.
I guess 1.5 years.
Yeah.
There are a number of documents that have been referenced already this morning. The master plan for the college, the university strategic plan, the college strategic plan. That information will be made available to you all either by a jump drive, or we may actually create a link on the website so nobody's got to keep track of the jump drive and they can just go to the website and find that if they need it. But there will be a body of information that we make available to you all to inform your decision making and your thought process. If there are things today that sort of become clear that you need to look at, let us know and we'll make sure you get them. Similarly, if there are people that you want to talk to, you need to identify who those folks are, and we will facilitate that in whatever way we want to. But we do not envision that this is just about the people sitting in this room. It's also about a number of other stakeholders throughout the state, maybe some folks in some other states who have experience that would be informative for us. So today, we hope that you will develop that plan of work, identify the information that you want to look at and you want to consider And then if you let us know what those things are, we'll make sure that they're available to you. I hope we will also develop sort of a timeline and a plan for the rest of this process and how many times we need to get back together as a group or your subcommittee. So I think that's all going to come into focus today, is the goal.
Thank you.